This is the Jay Pitt Show.
There were two studies. I don't know if you want to call them studies or they pulled data. But anyways, these two data pools came out a few weeks ago. One of them was fastest growing large cities in Kentucky from 2020 to 2025. At number one on the list, you have Richmond in Madison County. They saw a 15.1% increase in population change from 2020 to 2025. In Elizabethtown, where we're both from, I know your team does sell a lot down there now, and that's about where 50 to 60% of my business comes from, or the Meade County area. But anyways, like Hardin County and surrounding areas saw 12.9% increase in population change from 2020 to 2025. I think a lot of that's driven by forward plan expectations. I do think Elizabethtown was growing anyways, and and that. So what's interesting about this though, so we don't see Jefferson County on this list anywhere.
Nope.
Or any city in Jefferson County on this list. So I think it's an issue. I think I looked it up. Way down this list, Jefferson County saw like a 1.1 or 1.2% increase. Obviously, when you're larger, I do think you're going to see slower increase over small cities that are starting to do well. But I do think it's an issue. I know you thought it was kind of skewed and there were some issues with it because they don't include the surrounding areas. But
talking about in Jefferson County. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Louisville's is a major metro. We merged city and county governments. So essentially all of Jefferson County is Louisville now. That was maybe 2 decades ago now that happened. And yeah, I mean, all of the growth that is happening, you don't see. Okay, so Ryan, you drive to Nashville. What do you see in the skyline?
Cranes.
You see cranes everywhere, right? You see cranes everywhere, which means they're building vertically, becoming more dense.
And bachelorette parties on rooftops.
Yeah, that certainly, and thirsty peddlers and all the things. Anyway, you see cranes. You see that in a lot of major cities. Louisville is not quite there yet. The majority of our growth in Jefferson County has been sprawl, which means, Bullitt, Oldham, Shelby, Spencer have seen the benefit of the majority of the growth that happens in this major metro. And this study disregards all of that.
Yeah.
Louisville probably at some point will enter a phase where it must grow more dense and more vertical. To this point, it has resisted that urge, unlike cities that are not quite sister cities, but maybe slightly ahead in the growth curve have had to resort to. I think Louisville's comps in terms of metropolitan areas are Dayton, Columbus, not Indianapolis, Nashville, Cincinnati. Those are not comps for Louisville.
Yeah.
Those are substantially larger areas. So I don't know what to say with that, but I just think this is kind of, there's maybe a fatal flaw in the logic.
And I guarantee if you ask people that in those areas you mentioned would say they're from Louisville.
100%. If you're outside the state of Kentucky and you ask someone from Oldham County where they're from, they're not going to tell you Crestwood.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you Louisville.
Right.
Okay. And if that is the case, then, practically speaking, we should include those areas in terms of growth. So I don't think Louisville's not growing. Okay. I would just include those other areas in Louisville. But all the same, it's worth considering the fact that Richmond and Elizabethtown have seen crazy substantial growth. Okay. And remember, this growth is measured in percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the smaller a place is, 30 or 40,000 residents to Richmond is an extreme percentage of their current population, whereas in Louisville, it's not.
So I was going to say, so the population in Richmond in 2025 was 40,663. Hardin County Elizabethtown City, 35,448.
Yeah.
So
So it's a whole lot easier to get a larger percentage change when you're small. Now, the thing that this makes me think about is what's driving the growth in Richmond. It has to be is it expansion? Richmond is not Georgetown, so it's not Toyota, although they have expanded that facility. Is Richmond growing as a function because when you Google it, it cites the number one reason for population surge is proximity to Lexington.
I think it's probably Lexington starting to expand out.
So again, this would be akin to Shelbyville growing as being proximate, or Shepherdsville growing as being proximate to Louisville.
And I think even like Elizabethtown, I know it's not super close to Louisville, but I think there have been a number of people from Louisville moved to Elizabethtown.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, yourself included.
Yeah. But,
I mean, you're from Elizabethtown originally, but
myself for now.
for now. So, yeah, factors driving growth: commuter town for the Lexington area, lower cost of living, business-friendly policy, annexation. So they're growing in every way. It cites, business licenses being up substantially. A large 190-acre industrial park with I-75 access led to 700 new business licenses issued in 2025. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. I agree with you on the Elizabethtown area. I think it was growing prior to the Ford plant. Now that obviously that project is kind of shuttered, you still have the facility. Something is going to, I don't know if there's been an official announcement. There's certainly been rumors of what might locate there, but it's a state-of-the-art facility that is the size of a small town.
Yeah.
So something's going to go there to help continue the growth.
So there were 2 Oldham County cities that landed on the top 20 at 18 LaGrange, 5.8%, and 20 Crestwood at 5.5%.
I wonder which one is larger. I guess LaGrange is probably larger.
Is 10,669, Crestwood 6,582.
If you asked me the 2 largest towns in Oldham County, I would have said those 2. Thinking that LaGrange was slightly larger, but that they weren't that far apart.
Yeah.
Because Crestwood, being closer proximity to Louisville, has seen probably more growth year over year for the last couple of decades. Yeah. Not surprising, not entirely surprising, but like you said, I think most people would say they're from Louisville.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what I wanted to also talk about with this is, so the second graph that came out, housing markets where home prices are falling year over year. Now, remember, we just said Elizabethtown was second on growth from 2020 to 2025. But on housing markets out of the whole country where home prices are falling year over year, Elizabethtown lands, it says Elizabethtown, Fort Knox, Kentucky. I don't know why they've lumped those together, but it puts that at number 10 on the list.
Nationwide.
Nationwide at a 3.37% decrease in home prices.
And nothing else in the state of Kentucky made the list.
No, there was, I believe, let me see here. London, Kentucky.
Okay.
Saw a 6.81% decrease.
Wow. So that was higher on the
They
list.
were third on the list. Yeah.
Why would London, Kentucky? That's interesting. Okay. So
That's the only 2.
I have a proposed explanation.
There's a lot of Florida and a lot of Texas on here.
Yeah, fair. And this could be applied. I have a proposed rationale to put out there for
I
this.
think I do too. So I want to hear yours first.
Okay, so I think home price increases and decreases, specifically decreases, are a bit misleading. The reason, is that it doesn't necessarily, the real estate market is a dynamic market. It is ever changing. You might look at other markets and compare them, and that would help you understand how dynamic. Let's talk about oil. That's a popular one right now. The price of oil is high. You're hearing the news. The price of oil dropped to this. The price of oil rise to this. Gas prices are high. But oil is pretty homogeneous, right? The majority of oil used for gasoline is very similar. It's the exact same. And the price is the price has a large impact, okay, but you're not like getting much variance in the product. With real estate, there's a lot of variance in the product: old, new, current, modern, what style, how large, what location. There's a lot of variance in the product of real estate. But your average decrease in price only takes into account the homes that have sold over that period of time. It doesn't speak to, and I think we mistakenly apply this standard to all real estate and the value of all real estate that hasn't sold. If in London, Kentucky, let's, for example, say, all of the housing stock is really, really old, right? And, you know, let's say that last year houses were being bought up by investors, improved and resold, and they sold for higher prices because there was, you know, an available amount of demand to meet that supply. And then this year, for whatever reason, those homes were not improved, and those buyers went elsewhere outside of London to buy more modern homes, leaving only the dated homes to sell. And then they only sold at lower prices. Well, that's going to convey a large decrease in the average price of homes in London, Kentucky. And the smaller the data set, the more pronounced there is an opportunity for these wild swings in decrease. Now, it could happen the other direction. It could happen in terms of price increases. Okay, I just don't think you can put a lot of stock in the fact that London had a 6% decrease in home prices and expect there to be some wildly different conditions year over year in London.
Sure.
You understand?
Yeah,
Elizabethtown is the same way.
I get it.
Maybe it's the fact in Elizabethtown, and I think this may be where you're headed, that last year prior to shuttering the news of the plant opening up, you had a majority of new construction homes sell, which on average sell for higher prices.
Yeah, and I think you had a lot of first-time investors get into the market a few years ago.
Yeah.
People buying homes thinking they could rent them and do really well, and that had never done it before, and now they're selling them, having to sell them. But actually, what I think could be a contributing factor is there were a lot of apartments built.
Yeah.
So you have your apartment inventory skyrocket. The people you thought that weren't going to come or thought were going to come didn't all flood in. Maybe they did to build the plant, but then they all left, and now all those workers haven't moved in. So you have all these apartments, so they're competing, bringing prices down, and maybe it's more attractive to rent these new apartments at lower prices versus buy a home. I think that could be a contributing factor.
I mean, well, the rental market certainly has an impact on the sales market for sure. And not even as a direct comparison. I mean, home prices must come down to compete with, you know, the competition of lower rental prices. If someone is on the margin of whether to buy or sell.
Yeah.
That's a thing. But again, it could just be that less expensive homes are the ones selling.
Yeah.
The economy is tighter as a whole. Jobs aren't as readily available, and people are buying less expensive homes, but
they could also be the only ones being listed.
less expensive homes relative to what? Relative to what you thought they were worth, or relative to the homes that were able to be sold the year before? Sellers may be holding on to inventory because they know this. And again, going back to the original point I made, it's a dynamic market that moves really, really fast, right? I just, there isn't the volatility in the real estate market, not here, not in Elizabethtown, not in the Midwest, not in Kentucky, that these type of stories suggest. There is serious volatility in the price of oil. There are very few buyers, right? And when they're not buying, they hold a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
Okay. In real estate, you have a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers relative to the way other things. I think trying to make the market seem more volatile is a trick to get clicks. It used to be to sell newspapers and, get views on the 6 o'clock news. And now it's a tool to get clicks and get people to share your story that you put out. And I don't see it. We're having a phenomenal year in real estate in the state of Kentucky right now.
Yeah.
E-Town is down. Obviously that has something to do with the Ford plant not really opening. And the backlash from the preparation that was going on for it to open. Obviously that's the case. Not sure what's happening in London, but I have a hard time imagining that the London, Kentucky real estate market is more volatile than Elizabethtown right now.
Yeah, which, if there's a London, Kentucky agent listening to this or hears this,
Let us know.
write us and let us know your thoughts on it, and if it really has fallen that much, or if there's, another reason you think that number says that. We'd love to hear from you.